Ladies and gentlemen, James Lane here, and I am exhausted. I'm sure you can see it in my face. I've spent all day on Parler trying to get as many people as possible to join the Underground Railroad. That's right, Operation Underground Railroad. That is the American Reveille's vision of getting thousands of people onto a mailing list that I can keep updated in case of emergencies when the left attacks our social media platforms. And also, it will allow me to compile other reliable news sources and distribute it to you alongside, of course, the current events news and American Reveille Productions podcasts, etc., etc. But this, my friends, this is the 53rd episode of the American Reveille Podcast. It is Monday, the 11th of January, 2021, and why not? Why not? I say, why not? We're going to talk all about the Insurrection Act. We're going to talk about the Insurrection Act because things are strange. Things are weird. My spider senses are tingling, ladies and gentlemen. And as much as I like to stay away from the realm of conspiracy theory, like Steve Bannon says, there are no conspiracies, yet at the same time there are no coincidences. I think I say that correct. I'm pretty sure I say that correct. Anyway, what I'm trying to get at is that there are too many strange things going on for it to be something normal. I think something big's happening behind the scenes, but you know what we're going to do? We're going to deep dive the Insurrection Act. They're talking about whether or not Trump might have signed it on Sunday. Maybe he did. My fingers are crossed that he did. But just in case he did, we're going to cover it. We're going to cover the history of the Insurrection Act so you actually know the context of how it can be used. And then we're going to read the Insurrection Act so you know what has to be activated, what has to be triggered for it to be used. And then I'm going to show you why I think it may have happened. And that isn't going to include reading what somebody put in a blog. That's going to include using my own noggin and bringing you something first, fresh, and foremost, something nobody else has brought you before. Folks, stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, James Lane here. It is the 53rd episode of the American Reveille Podcast. We are under attack, under assault. Parler is down. Amazon, Twitter, Facebook, Google, they all put a hit on John Matze and took out one of our only social media platforms. You know, I said I was going to say at least our only social media platform. But then I thought to myself, well, there's some others. There's Gab. There's Clout Suite, or how I keep thinking Hootsuite because it's a social media management program. What is it? Clout Hub. There we go. Clout Hub. There's a couple others, but they're not working very well because they can't handle the uptick in traffic, the millions of patriots that are migrating over to their services. So I thought about that in mid-sentence and it kind of screwed up what I was going to say, but that's all right. Look, guys, you have to understand something. YouTube, they're going to take us down at any point now. I'm sure of it. We're all over. We're on other channels. We're on Rumble. We're going to be up on other places. We're going to have our own system. I'm looking into what I need to do to create our own server systems here for the American Reveille. And we're looking into what it is that we have to upgrade basically to do what Alex Jones does, where he can have his own band.video, his own area where nobody can touch him. You can't remove him off the internet. That is what we need to make sure that we are protected from the onslaught that is coming. Now, I know I've said again and again and again, by the way, before I get into this, by the way, do me a favor. Operation Underground Railroad. You can go to the website, www.americanreveille.com, and sign up. There's a newsletter thing there. Sign up for it. We're turning that into Operation Underground Railroad, where we will be getting the patriots the information they need on I'm going to email you pretty much daily, just like I would on social media, so that you can see what's going on throughout the day. But there'll also be a weekly newsletter, and we're going to start compiling other reliable news sources as well. So as Parler is down, as they attack other right-wing social media outlets, you'll at least be connected. We're going to start spreading that, guys, old school style, 90s style. I'm going to ask you to forward these things to everyone you know so we can spread ourselves the old-fashioned way through the mailing list, and we're going to team up with other patriots. We're going to make this happen for all of us, ladies and gentlemen. They will never, ever silence us. They will never, ever shut us down. We will always find a way. All right, folks. So with that being said, if that doesn't work, if for some reason you can't get a hold of me through the contact, through the newsletter, and by the way, we have an awesome new website coming. Just wait. Give it a couple weeks. Just wait. You're going to see this thing. You're going to go, oh my gosh, it's awesome. But if for some reason the buttons don't work, the CAPTCHA doesn't work, you don't get through. I've heard that from a lot of people. They had some issues. Some people didn't have issues. That's fine. Do me a favor. Email me directly, James Lane at AmericanReveille.com. James Lane at AmericanReveille.com. Ask me to manually add you to the list, and I will manually add you to the list. It's going to be awesome. You're going to get things you can't get anywhere else. It's going to be like your one-on-one lifeline pipeline to me. It's going to be straight to the email, the direct email that I check, and I'm going to be massively sending that out to all of the patriots and connecting you all together as well. It's going to basically be old school social media, ladies and gentlemen, via the carrier pigeon that is email, folks. So what I want to do with this episode is very simple. I'm exhausted. I've been pushing all night to get people to the mailing list. We got well over 1,000 people. Thank you guys so much. I look forward to making this underground railroad operation fully functional and devastating to the leftist ideology. But in the meantime, I am exhausted, working all day to get that up, doing everything I can to get you guys motivated, rallied, put together, getting everything I can get done on the business side of the house, working with everybody, multiple meetings, getting together, talking to the folks that are helping out with the American Reveille, folks that are dedicated and passionate and wanting to spread the truth to you. It's been a busy day. So it is the wee hours of the morning before I have to go to work, Monday, January 11th, 2021, and I had to get something out to you. I can't leave you hanging. And I figured all the different times that I've told you, no, I'm not going to cover Italy. I'm not going to cover all the conspiracy sounding stuff. Rah, 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 rah. Well, you know, something weird's in the air, ladies and gentlemen. You feel it. I feel it. Too many people with a lot of high ranks saying a lot of interesting things. Too many coincidences. And you know what they say about coincidences. There are no coincidences. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I figured I could do is bring you something interesting that no one else would be bringing you. And that would be kind of like a hybrid operation, something that would be a little bit different, but yet on the same line. So if you're following the other people that are knee deep in the Q stuff, you're going to at least get some background. If it does come true, if it does happen, you're going to know exactly why. So I found this great thing on the History Channel, basically giving you a little background about why the Insurrection Act was created, what it's used for. And then what I figured we would do, and I thought it would be fun, would be to go and read 10 U.S. Code Chapter 13, the Insurrection Act. And when we read that, you're going to start going, oh, shoot, because some things are going to sound very familiar. And then I'm going to show you the statement that Trump had released the other day that kind of ties it together and makes me scratch my head and go, man, maybe this could happen. I mean, we're supposed to hear from Trump today. We know some weird stuff happened. Airspace was closed over Washington. There's troops everywhere. I mean, I don't want to say something's happening, but it could be. I'm not going to say it is one way or another. I usually take a hard stance, but folks, without more solid information, this is where I have to stay with it at this point. But I will entertain the idea because it seems logical at the moment. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, Pence, the Democrats, the rhinos, they've silenced, along with social media, along with Chinese infiltration, they've literally silenced 75 million Americans. You and me, ladies and gentlemen, the president, our president, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know about you, but that sounds like insurrection to me. That sounds like insurrection to me all night long. All night long, all night, folks. It could be. It really could be. I don't want you to get disappointed if it isn't. But when we go through this, you're going to definitely, at least at the minimum, have a better understanding of where the president would be coming from if he does drop the iron hammer on the left. And all I can say is my fingers are crossed, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get to it. This came out June 3rd, 2020. It's on the History Channel. Dave Roos wrote it. It's called Thomas Jefferson Signed the Insurrection Act in 1807 to Foil a Plot by Aaron Burr. With his political career in ruins after killing Alexander Hamilton, Aaron Burr set off to claim lands in the Southwest, and President Jefferson intended to stop him. Folks, the Insurrection Act isn't for rebellion. It's for a whole number of things, including diabolical plots and conspiracies, the likes of which we've never seen, and it seems like we are going through one of those right now as the Marxist, leftist, Democrat evildoers seize control over the wheel. Folks, let's start reading. The Insurrection Act gives U.S. presidents the authority to deploy active duty military to maintain or restore peace in times of crisis. The Insurrection Act was invoked numerous times in the 20th century, most famously when Dwight D. Eisenhower sent the 101st Airborne Division to enforce desegregation of public schools in Little Rock, Arkansas. But the origins of the Insurrection Act date back more than 200 years to a bizarre chapter in American history when Aaron Burr plotted to raise an army and establish his own dynasty in either the Louisiana Territory or Mexico. Burr, a decorated Revolutionary War officer and senator from New York, served as vice president during Thomas Jefferson's first term. Burr had grand political aspirations, and they were dashed after he killed his rival, Alexander Hamilton, in a duel in 1804. Now, after a duel with Hamilton, Burr, he set his sights on Louisiana. Burr was never arrested or tried for Hamilton's murder, but it effectively ended Burr's political career. With no prospects in Washington, D.C. or New York, Burr set his sights on the West, namely the newly acquired Louisiana Territory and Mexican-owned lands in the Southwest. The details of Burr's plot were never clear, but it involved mustering an army to invade Mexico under the pretense of a war with Spain, and then keeping the conquered land for himself. Burr, he thought that he had an ally in General James Wilkinson, commander of the U.S. Army and first governor of the Louisiana Territory, but when rumors of Burr's plot leaked into the newspaper, Wilkinson turned on his co-conspirator. In a letter sent on October 21st, 1806, Wilkinson spilled the details of the plot to Jefferson without mentioning Burr by name. But Jefferson had already grown concerned enough about Burr's strange activities that Jefferson had sent his own letter to Secretary of State James Madison, asking if the Constitution granted him authority to deploy the army to stop a rebellion. In his reply, Madison said no. It does not appear that regular troops can be employed under legal provision against insurrections, wrote Madison, but only against expeditions having foreign countries for the object. Both Jefferson and Madison were strict interpreters of the Constitution and wouldn't dare exercise authority that wasn't explicitly written in the founding document, so they needed to convince Congress to give Jefferson that power. And to do that, they first needed proof of Burr's conspiracy. That's where Wilkinson's letter comes in. Jefferson was looking for a legitimate source of on Burr's plot, and he was willing to believe Wilkinson, even though historians suggest that Jefferson knew darn well that Wilkinson was a liar with his own suspect reputation, says John Fee, a history professor at Messiah College. But Jefferson needed a source to move the gears to try to stop Burr, who was his biggest fear. All right, so we're going to keep going. Jefferson orders Burr's capture. This is wacky stuff, right? So I want you to remember, we're going through wacky stuff right now. Wacky stuff's happened before. It'll happen again. Who knows how it's going to resolve, but the Insurrection Act has been used for this whackanery before, ladies and gentlemen. That's wacky stuff happening all around us. I'm making that word right now. I'm claiming it for the right. Whackanery. W-H-A-C-K-A-N-A or E-R-Y. You can pick one. I don't know. Whackanery. Anyway, that's going to become a shirt one day. Trust me. Armed with Wilkinson's proof, Jefferson issued a proclamation on November 27, 1806, that laid out the plot and enjoined all military officers, both state and federal, to be vigilant. If we see a proclamation come out today, folks, some stuff. Excuse me, I'm practicing so I don't curse in front of my kids. Some crazy stuffs is about to come out, will come out. Ladies and gentlemen, if a proclamation is issued by the president, that is something that could happen. You never know. Anyway, all right? He issued the proclamation November 27th, 1806. It laid out the plot. It enjoined all military officers, both state and federal, to be vigilant in searching out and bringing to condign punishment all persons engaged or concerned in such an enterprise, in seizing, detaining, subject to the disposition of all laws, all vessels, arms, military stores, other means provided or providing for the same, and in general in preventing the carrying on of such expedition or enterprise by all lawful means within their power. Quote, Jefferson essentially puts a bounty on Burr's head, says Fee, and within weeks, the Ohio militia seized boats belonging to Burr's ragtag army and raided a private island on the Ohio River. The guy had an island that served as a military encampment. But Burr evaded capture. I just keep imagining, for some reason, like they're pirates on the island, except they're dressed like Robin Hood men in tights, and they're doing like the dance and we're men in tights, tights. We're roaming around the forest looking for fights. Whatever that. You remember that movie. If you don't remember that movie, it was a Mel Brooks movie, Robin Hood Men in Tights. Anyway, when they talk about them having their own little island with a bunch of dudes running around being a ragtag army, it just makes me think of a musical involving men in spandex. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. I'm the guy that brings you this information, okay? If it's funny, you can laugh at me. Ha ha. That's okay. Laugh at me. I'm all right with that. But don't judge me. Anyway, Burr evaded capture, and rumors continued to swirl that he was recruiting soldiers en route to the Louisiana territory and soliciting help from Britain to establish his spin-off nation in the West. Jefferson still refused. How's this guy think? I mean, I know back then there was a lot of territory and stuff, but it's like the Democrats right now. Like, I don't understand how Biden and all them, how Pelosi, how they don't see that we, the American people, can see what they're doing. Are they that dumb, or do they just think they're that untouchable? Because if they think they're that untouchable, it's going to end up being their undoing. That's what history teaches us every time, ladies and gentlemen. Get cocky. Watch what happens. Isn't that a life lesson, folks? Some of these wealthy, aristocratic elites never learn that lesson, folks. Never at all. Jefferson still refused to deploy the standing U.S. Army to track down Burr and quash the rebellion once and for all, a reticence that was mocked by his political enemies, the Federalists. Jefferson, though, to his credit, says, "I'm not going to act unless the Constitution says I can act," says Fee. The Federalist takes a much broader view of the Constitution. If the Constitution doesn't outright condemn it, then it's okay. So think about that. That's a very different view. Constitutionalist just goes by what is stated. A Federalist goes by everything's okay as long as they don't explicitly say it's not okay, right? So like if we went by like the 10 commandments, but there isn't an 11th commandment that says thou shalt not, I don't know, cook fish on Wednesdays, then cook fish on Wednesday all day. Cook it all you want. I don't know. I'm just making something up. Probably doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but I'm sure most of you get what I'm trying to say. Listen, it's like 2 a.m., okay? Give me a break. Jefferson stuck to his principles, and in December of 1806 asked Congress to pass a bill authorizing the employment of the land or naval forces of the U.S. in case of insurrection. The legislation, known as the Insurrection Act, would take another 3 months to become law when it was finally signed on March 3rd, 1807. Aaron Burr had already been in custody for 11 days. You see, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that a president can do. There's a lot of power we haven't seen used in a very long time. So it's possible that we're about to see it, maybe even in a couple hours. You never know. Maybe we won't see it until right on the 20th. Maybe we won't see it at all. And we're going to be fighting uphill to get these left-wing, tyrannical, Hitler-esque Gestapo using, because make no mistake about it, BLM and Antifa, that is the Gestapo, the brown shirts, the jack boots of the left-wing parties, the Democrats, the socialists, that's basically their street police, ladies and gentlemen. Make no mistake. Look, let's not get too far off. While the Insurrection Act was written expressly to foil Burr's plot, it wasn't used to capture him. The very first time the Insurrection Act was actually invoked was a year later, in 1808, when American merchant ships in the Great Lakes flouted Jefferson's trade embargo with the British. In response, Jefferson accused the rogue traders of forming insurrections against the authority of the laws of the United States and authorized the military to take them. So, when has the Insurrection Act actually been invoked? Let's talk about it, all right? Let's talk about it right now. For everybody listening, there's a picture here of a bunch of troops. They're standing in front of Minnie Jean Brown, 15, one of the Little Rock Nine. She arrived outside Central High School as members of the 101st Division of the Airborne Command stood ready to protect them under orders from Dwight D. Eisenhower, the president, in Little Rock, Arkansas, September 25th, 1957. That's a year before, well, actually, my mom's birthday is January 18th. So happy birthday, Mom. 7 days from now, my mom's birthday. But not to get off subject here, that was before my mom was born. The National Guard was deployed. If you've ever seen the movie Forrest Gump, they're the people that he picks up the book for. That's a very, very historic image in black and white. The young African-American woman with a look of concern on her face, with a white button-down dress blouse and her hair taut up. You can see multiple soldiers, and it is a very, very intense photo. Anyway, let's keep reading. Since 1807, the Insurrection Act has been amended several times to meet different political challenges. In 1861, Abraham Lincoln expanded the law to form the legal basis for waging the Civil War. Without it, he wouldn't have had the authority to send federal troops into a state without the governor's permission. After the Civil War, the Insurrection Act was further amended to give the president authority to enforce the 14th Amendment and the conditions of Reconstruction in the South. That authority is now Section 253 of Title 10 of the U.S. Code, which gives the president the right to take military action within a state when, quote, any part or class of its people is deprived of any right, any privilege, any immunity, any protection named in the Constitution and secured by law, and the constituted authorities of that state are unable, fail, or refuse to protect that right, privilege, or immunity, or to give that protection. Folks, that makes me really feel like something is happening. I mean, Trump has every reason right now. I mean, wouldn't it be awesome? I mean, he could technically send the military to go arrest Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey and Sanjar Pajarara, whatever his name is. No offense to any Indian Americans or Indian nationals out there. I'm just making fun of the guy because he's an asshole, not because of the heritage of his name. So please don't take that personally. Folks, it would be so awesome. But that's just me getting all excited over nothing right now because we don't know what's happening until it actually happens. So again, this is all just speculation and good information for you to know just in case something does go down or if it is going down. We've seen the blackouts. We've seen the testimony, the sworn affidavits from Italy. We've seen what General Flynn's had to say. We hear that he could be appointed the vice president. Who knows what's rumor, what's not rumor right now. But if it isn't rumor, that would be awesome. I'm not lying there. I'm being honest. Wouldn't it be awesome? Either way, we have to protect our free speech. And to do that, we need to know as much information about as many things as possible. And with the mood in the air and the weird, thick feeling floating about, we might as well keep talking about this stuff right here. All right, that's the same authority invoked during the Civil Rights era by Presidents Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy to deploy troops to the South to enforce desegregation in defiance of governors. The Insurrection Act was I saw the name John F. Kennedy and I just went off there. The Insurrection Act was last invoked in 1992 under President George H.W. Bush, and Peter Wilson, then governor of California, requested help to quell the widespread riots after 4 police officers charged in the beating of Rodney King were acquitted. You know, we wondered this whole time why the Insurrection Act wasn't used for the riots across this country for 6 or 7 months. And now the left is trying to frame us and say that white supremacists are doing all these evil things when we know that the people, the same people, the Antifa people that caused these problems have infiltrated and were sparking contention among some of the other far right-wing folks that might have been there doing some things that they weren't supposed to be doing. I condemn all violence either way. There is a way to do this the right way, ladies and gentlemen. But we know what sparked that, and we know it wasn't Trump supporters. We know that the Trump rallies were peaceful. We know everything he did was peaceful. We know this was a coup, ladies and gentlemen, an infiltration and a coup, and now the left has overplayed their hands, and they're trying to rub our face in the proverbial dog poo, ladies and gentlemen, and in that poo we will find retribution. No joke. I know it's kind of wacky how that came out, but either way, you have to understand what I'm getting at, which is by them overplaying their hand, by them being gigantic douchebags and trying to punish 75 million Americans, the DNC, big tech alike, between the censorship of our president, the censorship of millions of us, pulling out Parler, shutting it down, shutting our voices down. Folks, the chickens are coming to roost, Bobby Boucher, as they say in the movie The Waterboy, ladies and gentlemen. Regardless of what happens, whether we got to suffer for a while or whether we don't, tyranny, like I said in the last video, is on the menu. And everybody can smell it. And tyranny doesn't smell like pizza or apple pie and ice cream. Tyranny doesn't smell like steak and lobster. Tyranny smells like burnt hair and a bag of flaming dog shit. And that's what the left is throwing at us. And that isn't acceptable, ladies and gentlemen. Not acceptable at all. Now, I know, I go on tandems. Deal with it. It's the podcast. It's Monday, episode 53. Episode 53, podcast, American Reveille. When we do the podcast, folks, the podcast can go in any different direction. So if you're wondering why I'm not getting to the point, why I'm rambling on and on and on, is this guy out of his mind? No, I'm not out of my mind. I just don't script a thing, and I do and say whatever the hell I want on Monday's shows. And just because they shut down the internet and we got to use carrier pigeons and homing pigeons and freaking blow darts and whatever kind, cans, soup, let me get Campbell's cans with strings, just because we got to use that to communicate, paper airplanes, folks, they're not going to get rid of us. They're just going to wake the sleeping giant. And this sleeping giant has a very, very loud voice. Snores too. Sometimes farts in his sleep. But anyway, you don't want to know about that. The Insurrection Act, all right? We talked about it. George W. Bush, 1992. That's Rodney King. Now, 2005, Hurricane Katrina. Many of us remember Katrina devastated Louisiana, the Gulf Coast. President George W. Bush explored expanding the Insurrection Act to place command of the region's National Guard under federal control. Ultimately, Bush declined to invoke the act, although it was eventually amended in 2006 to broaden the scope under which the president may act under the law. So, we know there's National Guard in Washington, D.C., and that just told us that President Trump could take control of that National Guard, including the military, if he wanted to. So what is happening? Will he declassify first? Will he pardon people first? Does he do everything at the same time? Does this have to be a well-timed chess move? What is going on? What do we do? We talked about where this came from. We talked about Aaron Burr. We talked about Thomas Jefferson. We went through the whole shebang, shapoopy, the rigmarole, and now we bring you to 10 U.S. Code, Chapter 13, Insurrection. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Insurrection Act, and it is not as long as you think. Section 251, section or statute. I always forget what that little squiggle means. Folks, if you're listening, I'm looking at the little squiggle. It's like an S with a circle in the middle. It's in all this legal mumbo jumbo, and it means either statute or section, but I'm pretty sure it means section. Anyway, section 251, federal aid for state governments. Let's click this right here, and let's read 10 U.S. Code 251 to 254B, renumbered 24A to 24F, and federal aid state governments. I'll try not to read any more of those from here forward. Anyway, whenever there is an insurrection in any state against its government, the president may, upon the request of its legislature, or if its governor, if the legislature, or of its governor, Isn't that funny? What if, like Pennsylvania or some of these other states, what if their legislatures had secretly sent a letter to the president requesting this? That's something to think about. So whenever there's an insurrection in any state against its government, the president may, upon the request of its legislature or of its governor, if the legislature cannot be convened, call into federal service such of the militia of the other states in the number requested by that state, and use such of the armed forces as he considers necessary to suppress the insurrection. Now, remember, an insurrection, they want you to believe it's just like a bunch of people running into the Capitol building. That's why they're using what happened at the Capitol building to define insurrection and sedition and treason, because they want you to have that picture associated in your head. They don't want you to remember and realize that treason, that sedition, that insurrection could be a plot, could be a couple people taking over, suppressing the rights of others, maybe 75 million Americans destroying their free speech and laughing about it, trying to usurp the sitting president just a couple days before he supposedly transfers power to Joe, not my President Biden, or maybe he transfers power to himself on a second term. It's all possible. At this point, anything's up in the air. In 2020, it taught us anything could happen. So maybe 2020 teaches us that space aliens are coming. Who the hell knows at this point? All I know is from the information I have, it's best to speculate on this by giving you the truth about the information at hand and what the Insurrection Act actually is. So let's go back from this and move on to use of militia and armed forces to enforce federal authority. So this is 10 U.S. Code 252, use of militia and armed forces to enforce federal authority. Whenever the president considers that unlawful obstructions, combinations, or assemblages or rebellion against the authority of the United States makes it impracticable to enforce the laws of the United States in any state by the ordinary course of judicial proceedings, such as crooked courts, such as 50 courts not hearing a valid court case. This isn't about whether you're disobeying the president or the Congress. This is about the authority of the United States, which is defined by the Constitution. So everything comes down to obeying the Constitution. So that gives him the power to do things, ladies and gentlemen, things that we've never seen in our lifetimes. All right. So this is United States, the authority of the United States, make it impracticable to enforce the laws of the United States in any state. I said that judicial proceedings. He may call into federal service such of the militia of any state and use such of the armed forces as he considers necessary to enforce those laws or to suppress the rebellion. So basically, anything at all right, in the U.S. that obstructs normal justice, anything at all right, that the president considers leading to this, a rebellion, a sedition, insurrection. His decision, ladies and gentlemen, he can sign a piece of paper and make things happen. Is that what's about to happen? It could be. It could be. Interference with state and federal law, ladies and gentlemen, 10 U.S. Code 253, the president, by using the militia, all right, this is important, interference with state and federal law. The president, by using the militia or the armed forces or both or by any other means, shall take such measures as he considers necessary to suppress in a state any insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful combination, or conspiracy of it. Okay? 1. That so hinders the execution of the laws of the state and of the United States within the state. Remember, the problem with the Supreme Court is they're saying nobody has jurisdiction to enforce the laws that are broken within a state. When the courts and the executive branch are crooked, won't let the legislative branch do its job, all right, folks, and is hindering the execution of the laws in the state. Put 2 and 2 together, folks. This might be something. We might be onto something right here. So hinders the execution of the laws of that state and of the United States within the state. That any part or class of its people is deprived of a right, privilege, immunity, or protection. You mean 75 million of us? Named in the Constitution and secured by law, and the constituted authorities of that state are unable, fail, or refuse to protect that right, privilege, or immunity, or to give that protection, or opposes or obstructs the execution of the laws of the United States or impedes the course of justice under those laws. In any situation covered by Clause 1, the state shall be considered to have denied the equal protection of the laws secured by the Constitution. Remember, when they certified those ballots in the executive branch of those states, they were denying the equal protection of the laws secured by the Constitution. This is really starting to make sense, folks. Holy crap. Holy crap. Proclamation to disperse. That's Code 254. Whenever the president considers it necessary to use the militia or the armed forces under this chapter, he shall by proclamation immediately order the insurgents to disperse and retire peaceably to their homes, their abodes, within a limited time. Whenever the president considers it necessary. I'm going to read this again. Remember it. I'm giving you the test answer, folks. Whenever the president considers it necessary to use the militia or the armed forces under this chapter, he shall, by proclamation, immediately order the insurgents to disperse and retire peacefully to their abodes within a limited amount of time, ladies and gentlemen. Didn't he do that? This last one is just including Guam and Virgin Islands in this. Folks, this is very important. All right. It's very important that you understand this last one, this proclamation to disperse, that he had to let people know to peacefully go back to their homes. This is a very important stipulation in the Insurrection Act, and you have to check this box before you can use the Insurrection Act. They're saying that Trump signed the Insurrection Act last night. Did he? I don't know. It's not on the news. They're saying we'll have media blackouts. They're saying there'll be no way to get some of this information. We're going to blink, and it's going to be done, and we're going to find out about it through the emergency broadcast system. And you know what, folks? If for some reason all of a sudden my phone right now goes like an Amber Alert and an EMS message comes through, I wouldn't be surprised. With everything that happened in 2020 and everything that's happening now, I wouldn't be surprised, folks. So I'm not saying it is going to happen. I'm not sitting here pumping smoke up your butt. But what I am telling you is that it's possible. I wouldn't be surprised. And you know what makes me think about that even more? The fact that the exact wording of 254, proclamation to disperse, and we're going to read it one more time for shock and awe, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever the president considers it necessary to use the militia or armed forces, he shall make them, tell them, proclaim to them to immediately get the hell out of Dodge peacefully and go home. Did that happen? I remember it happening. Trump releases a statement telling supporters who stormed the Capitol to go home by Mark Moore. This was January 6, 2021. The New York Post, ladies and gentlemen, President Trump told his supporters who stormed the U.S. Capitol on Wednesday that he knows their pain, but now they must go home in peace. In peace. Let's put that right here. Whenever the president considers it necessary to use the militia or armed forces under this chapter, he shall by proclamation immediately order the insurgents to disperse and retire peaceably to their abodes within a limited time. President Trump told his supporters who stormed the U.S. Capitol on Wednesday that he knows their pain, but that they must go home in peace. Now we have Parler being shut down by Amazon, by all these companies that wield an unholy amount of power, right? We have free speech being canceled everywhere. We have 75 million Americans being oppressed. The left infiltrated our peaceful protest. They caused a riot. And maybe, just maybe, Trump, as smart as he is, maybe he found a loophole. And maybe when we walked into their trap, we had an even bigger trap waiting for them. And maybe today, tomorrow, the next day, maybe we'll get lucky. And maybe we'll find out that all along the swamp was being drained. Or maybe we're going to be struggling and sucking for air for a while. But either way, folks, we're in this fight together. This American Reveille movement, it's not going away. Just like President Trump isn't going away. Just like the problems that we're facing today aren't going to go away with the snap of a fingers, ladies and gentlemen. It's just not that simple. It's just not that simple, folks. And neither are we, because we're human beings. We're not sheep. We're not animals. We're not crap. We're not gum on the bottom of your shoe. And the left is going to find that out. They're going to find that out with a thunderous roar, ladies and gentlemen. Folks, I really appreciate you watching. All right. This is episode 53 of the American Reveille Podcast. Again, anything could happen. So you might as well be informed about what's been going on and about what the Insurrection Act really is. And I want to take a second really quick to just show you some alternate tech. First off, this is the American Reveille website. We are updating big time. We are getting a whole new format. It's going to be very professional. You're really going to love what we've done. But we added this really big banner across here, this Patriots Only newsletter, okay? This is going to be Operation Underground Railroad, all right? It's in the planning stages right now, but I need you to sign up right here. This is www.americanreveille.com, REVEILLE.com. Sign up for the newsletter. If for some reason it's not working, and remember, this newsletter is going to become a line of communication while they're censoring us. Parler's going to be down for a bit, folks. We're going to have trouble getting the word out. We had 15,000 people on Parler, and now we're going to be down to a 1,500 person mailing list. So we're going to want you to spread the word once you get there and email this to everybody you can. But if it doesn't work, email me directly, James Lane at AmericanReveille.com, James Lane at AmericanReveille.com, REVEILLE, and I will manually put you on the list. Of course, for now, you can still find me. All right. You can still find me on YouTube. This isn't going to the right place that I wanted it to go. Let's go back here. Look, you can still find me on YouTube, folks. You can still get me there for now, but let me warn you, I won't be there for long, most likely. If more popularity comes to this channel, it's growing every day. They will find me. They will shut me down. In the meantime, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, leave a comment. Try to get this message out to as many people as possible. That's what you have to understand. Even though you don't like this text sometimes, you have to participate in it because you're getting the other patriots that are stuck on YouTube to realize that there are more places they can go to find this content, folks. So if you're on YouTube, do that. But no, you can go to Rumble. I'm on Rumble. Subscribe to me there. And thank you to the almost 1,000 people who have already done that recently. That's www.rumble.com/C/American_Reveille. You can search for me. Either way, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. You can find a link for this channel in the section below the description. Gab, it's still a little, oh my gosh, what in the, oh. I didn't expect that to come up. Anyway, if you're listening, I put over to Gab, which is a new social media program that Donald Trump has a verified account at, by the way. And it has a GIF, or a GIF, however you say it, of a baby making really crazy faces. And it caught me off guard. And I'm a dad, so it just made me giggle to myself. But anyway, gab.com, folks. I have a profile there, ladies and gentlemen, American_Reveille, at American_Reveille. That is at gab.com. It's been a little shifty with its reliability, but we're upgrading. Everybody's upgrading with this censorship. Nobody expected it to come so fast. So Gab is upgrading their servers. I'm trying to get my stuff upgraded, depending on your donations for that, folks. And thank you so much. By the way, if you haven't donated and you would like to donate, www.AmericanReveille.com. Right over here, hit this donate tab. You can give us Bitcoin. You can hit the donate tab right here, $5, $10, $100, whatever you would like. It all gets reinvested into fortifying the hypothetical walls around Castle American Reveille movement. I should say CASA American Reveille movement, like CASA. Anyway, not just there, not just Rumble, not just Gab, also CloutHub. All right, clouthub.com, CLOUT hub.com. They also have apps for this. Gab is making an app as well pretty soon, but you can go here at The James Lane. All right, at The James Lane, just like Parler on CloutHub. We're going to see how that works out for us too. Follow me there as well. If you're listening, I'm still on iHeartRadio. I'm still on Audible, ladies and gentlemen. This is American Reveille Podcast. We have over 10,000 listeners a month. We're on track to get 15,000 this month alone, in the month of January. All right, folks? So please, 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 wherever you're listening to us, give us a rating, 5 stars, including Apple. I know we're pissed at Apple right now, but remember what I said earlier. We have to keep waking up the patriots. I know this part's going really long, but I'm just trying to let you know about all the alternate tech that's out there, all right? Give me the 5-star rating on Apple. Leave the comment, leave the review, help move me up the rankings. We're on TuneIn, we're on Spotify, folks, and I looked at the charts. We're not on the U.S. charts yet, but we're number 72 for news in Panama, and we're number 11 on the politics chart in Panama. So if you want to see us get the hell out of Panama, sorry, I couldn't help myself. If you want to see us get the hell out of Panama, all right, and start moving our way up towards the southern border, maybe hopping the fence and getting on the U.S. rankings, please keep listening to the podcast. If you prefer to watch, but you listen once in a while, subscribe, download all our stuff, get our numbers up, at least help out the cause so that more patriots like you can be exposed to the American Reveille and they can get the tools that they need to wake up their fellow patriots. Folks, I'm going to tell you one last time, if I haven't told you anything else, and no, it's not to donate, although if you do, I appreciate it greatly. I do. But remember, right here, sign up for the mailing list. Operation Underground Railroad, ladies and gentlemen. A right-wing underground railroad for people on the right. That's conservatives, that's Republicans, that's moderates, that's libertarians, that's everybody that identifies as some spectrum of the right, whether they're black, whether they're white, whether they're Hispanic, Asian American, whether they're purple, green, whether they're a ferret, a gopher, a guinea pig, a jackalope. Listen to me, ladies and gentlemen. You are welcome to the American Reveille movement. You are welcome on the right. You are welcome to be part of Operation Underground Railroad, where we are going to get all of the news to you while social media is down. We're going to also compile a list of other reliable news sources as well. Again, if that sign up does not work at AmericanReveille.com, REVEILLE.com, do me a favor, email me directly for anything, not just this, But if you have any comments, questions, concerns, any way you would like to help us out, James Lane at AmericanReveille.com. James Lane at AmericanReveille.com. REVEILLE. Folks, I hope you have a freaking wonderful Monday. I hope you have an amazing day. For everybody that joins the mailing list, I'm going to try to get you the pledge every day while Parler is down. The first one on this Monday might take a little while. I have to manually input over 1,000 email addresses in the next 24 hours or so to get that updated. So please bear with me, but we will get everything up and running ASAP, folks. I know things seem a little dark, but keep your head up, keep your shoulders back, keep your chin held high. We are fighters. We are not going anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you next time. Bye.